What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and today I'll be looking at part 1 of the Outlaw Rogue series of guides for the Shadowlands launch. This guide will cover things like abilities we learn while leveling to 60, talent builds, conduits, stat priorities, covenant choice, and legendaries. So let's see what awaits us as Outlaw Rogues in Shadowlands. As a quick heads up, this guide and most of what I put up on the channel is exclusively targeting PvE situations such as dungeons and raids. It's also still subject to change as we are still seeing covenants and classes getting tweaks almost every day as we get into the beginning of Shadowlands, so take this information with that knowledge in mind. I'll be going over things like the new abilities we'll be earning as we level from 50 to 60, talent recommendations, conduit and legendary recommendations, and stat priority recommendations as well. I'll be segmenting this video out so you can jump to whatever information you're interested in. Before I get started though, I wanted to give a quick thank you and welcome to the newest member of the channel's Patreon. So hello and thank you so much, Tej. I truly appreciate the support you've shown for the channel even prior to you becoming a patron, and even more so now, so I'll do my best to keep improving the channel. So we'll start with the new ranks and abilities that we gain while leveling from 50 to 60. Our first new change is at level 52, where we unlock Blade Flurry rank 2. When you activate Blade Flurry, you'll do a sweeping attack that hits up to 5 nearby enemies for a modest amount of damage. To be a number cruncher about it, it's 40% of attack power, which makes it just a smidge lower in damage than a Sinister Strike. This was a bonus added because they didn't want to remove the ability from the global cooldown, so instead they wanted to add something to make it feel good to press. It does a little bit of damage, which is a plus, but it does mean you'll definitely want to be near as many targets as possible when you trigger it to make sure you hit that 5 target cap. Also, as a heads up for those who haven't noticed, is when you press Blade Flurry now, it will knock you out of stealth, so you can't just pop it and then ambush, just as an FYI. At level 54, we'll get Numbing Poison. This is a new non-lethal poison that reduces the attack speed and cast speed of our target's hit by 15%. This is already a pretty great non-lethal poison, but it also has an interaction with the Shiv ability. If you Shiv a target while this is your active non-lethal poison, you'll remove an enrage effect from your target. For Outlaw, this is a fantastic addition to our already very impressive utility toolkit in dungeons, but probably won't see that much of a benefit or impact in raids. At level 56, we'll get Grappling Hook rank 2. This is a simple 15-second reduction to the cooldown of Grappling Hook, bringing it to 45 seconds as the baseline amount. And for level 58, we get Evasion rank 2. Dodging an attack while evasion is active will make you automatically proc our mastery damaging attack, Man Gauche. This is something that will only see moderate usage in world content when you're soloing things, or when your tank falls over and you end up face tanking all the mobs in your Mythic Plus dungeon. That's a possibility too. While leveling, you might want to consider running some different talents. These are of course entirely up to you, but I personally find these talent options to be quite useful. For the level 15 talent row, the tried and true Quick Draw is our go-to option, simply because it buffs our opportunity procs for extra damage and extra combo points. For the level 25 talent row, you could go about it 2 ways. Hit and Run is a nice, flat speed increase, which is very helpful in areas where you can't use your mount. However, Retractable Hook not only makes your cooldown shorter, but it makes the grappling effect pull you to your destination faster. And as many of you pirate types know out there, it can be very handy in scaling mountainous terrains or skipping in sections of zones entirely. I personally think Retractable Hook is the better option of the two, especially since its cooldown is affected by our True Bearing cooldown reduction and Restless Blades, meaning you can use it very often. For the level 30 row, Marked for Death is an exceptionally strong move, especially for us since we can Blade Flurry out all of our finishers and fuel our AoE damage even more by sniping low health enemies with this move for the free reset on death effect. In the level 35 row, Iron Stomach will be your best choice, simply because it helps improve self-healing. While it's not quite as awesome as Leeching Poison for Assassination or Soothing Darkness for Subtlety, it's still an improvement. The level 40 row is a bit of personal preference, though I think Prey on the Weak will still be our best choice here. This used to be a fantastic option back when Between the Eyes had a stun effect attached to it. However, this is no longer the case now that we have Kidney Shot as our combo point spending stun. It's still the only one that is a direct damage increase though if we do stun our target, so keep that in mind. For the level 45 row, Alacrity is our go-to talent, as free stat buffs are a simple and consistent gain to our performance. Extra haste means more energy regen and faster auto attacks, which make up a pretty large amount of our damage. And lastly, the level 50 talent row. Blade Rush is the best option for leveling for a few reasons. Its biggest strength, in my opinion, is it allows us to use it from up to 20 yards away, giving us a lunging attack to close the gap in on enemies. It's also affected by our cooldown reduction bonuses, does pretty solid damage, and gives us an extra 25 energy over 5 seconds, so definitely a fantastic option in virtually all situations. And if you choose to run War Mode, there are a number of talent choices that can be highly beneficial to your DPS output and just your mobility in general. Take Your Cut gives a nice and simple 15% haste buff every time you cast Roll the Bones, and it will affect allies within 8 yards as well, so if you're leveling in a party, it will buff them too, as long as they're close by. Boarding Party causes your Between the Eyes ability to increase the movement speed of all friendly nearby players within 10 yards by 30% for 5 seconds, which is quite useful as extra movement speed means faster leveling. And Cheap Tricks is another pretty useful War Mode talent as well, as it causes your Between the Eyes casts to make all pistol shots you use free for the next 5 seconds. Not spending energy allows you to pool up more of it more often, which is quite handy when chain pulling mobs. For talent choices, once we're max leveled and getting ready for raiding and dungeons and whatnot, things will change a little bit. It's always best to sim between different talent choices for each row since talents aren't always a one-size-fits-all matter, but these loadouts should hopefully put you in the right direction for the most possible damage. Some of them have very small differences in overall damage, so if you prefer a certain playstyle, I still definitely recommend simming it in comparison to see the difference. For our single target loadout, we'll be looking at Ghostly Strikes, Vigor, Alacrity, and Blade Rush, and this is why I recommend simming your character and seeing what talent options do for you, as in my case, Deeper Stratagem was nearly the same as Vigor, and Killing Spree was pretty close to Blade Rush as well, if you really wanted to use either of those talent options again. It's really unfortunate to say this for those interested in the new Dreadblades talent or loaded dice, but both sim over 200 DPS lower than Alacrity in my case, so unless you really liked the class fantasy of either of those options or the way they play, there will be a noticeable loss in performance that you'll have to take with it. For extended duration cleave, like 2 or 3 target cleave fights, all our talents will remain the same except for swapping in Quick Draw instead of Ghostly Strikes, simply because Ghostly Strike's 10% damage bonus will only affect that target. It isn't transferred via Blade Flurry because it's a debuff specific to that target, so yeah, just keep that in mind. For Mythic Plus, we'll use the Cleave setup, but we'll want to swap out Vigor for Marked for Death, especially if you're really good at abusing the reset mechanic of the ability and sniping low health targets with it. As you're gearing through dungeons, world quests, and raids, you'll want to keep an eye out for your stat priority. Thankfully, right now, agility is worth so much that, in general, an item level increase should be an upgrade. For your secondary stats though, I'll cover both single target and Dungeonslice oriented stuff as it does change a tiny bit. Again, definitely sim your own character and gear to see what options will give you the best possible results, and do keep this in mind in the future as there are many things that will affect your stat priority. For pure single target stats, you'll want to have, first and foremost, about 350 to 500 haste. And yeah, I know that number sounds awfully specific, but I've talked with quite a few of the big wigs over at Ravenholt, and yeah, it's between 350 to 500-ish is about the range. After that, you want primarily Versatility, then Critical Strike, and then Mastery. Any haste above that range will cause it to start dropping, so definitely sim your gear and stats to see exactly how much you should or shouldn't have. Depending on your Legendary or Covenant choice, you might not need as much crit and will instead want to pick up a little Mastery, so just keep that in mind. For Dungeonslice, we'll mainly want to focus on Versatility and then Crit, with Haste and Mastery both sitting a little bit lower. Again, sim yourself, as there are Legendaries and Covenant abilities and all sorts of stuff that can skew the value of crit for you, such as the First Strike's crit bonus from Crane of the Night Fae, or the Mark of the Master Assassin Legendary, which gives a 100% crit bonus for 4 seconds every time you come out of stealth. I'll elaborate more on Legendaries and Covenants in a little bit, but first we'll look at Conduits. Conduits are very similar to the relics we had in our Legion artifact weapons, if you remember those. They can be earned from various sources throughout the game, but always have one specific source, and basically they are special bonuses that improve our abilities. There are 3 types: Potency, which is our damage boosting ones, Finesse, which helps give us bonuses to our utility abilities, and Endurance, which often gives us defensive bonuses or self-healing features. These will go into a Soulbind tree, which is another new system in Shadowlands. The simple way to think of these is like a talent tree with branching paths that let you choose what bonuses you want and what conduit slots you want to use. Each covenant will have 3 Soulbind characters, which you'll unlock as you increase your Renown. Renown is basically Covenant reputation to keep it simple, and you'll increase it a couple times a week by doing 2 specific weekly quests, which involve going to the Maw to rescue souls, and to gather anima for your Covenant. Anima is a new currency exclusive to Shadowlands, and is used for Covenant-specific activities like improving your Covenant Sanctum, and buying cosmetic rewards and other goodies like that. An important thing to know about Renown and Soulbinds though, is that a Soulbind tree is not just fully unlocked just because you added the Soulbind character to your Covenant. They are tied to Renown progression as well, so it does take some time to be able to utilize an entire Soulbind tree. Back onto the topic of conduits though, we generally will want to take advantage of our Potency conduit options, so that is going to be the main focus of this section. I will cover Finesse and Endurance ones in a future video, but that will be targeted at all 3 specs of Rogue since they're universal. For Outlaw, there will be 4 different conduits we can earn, so I'll go over those now as well as their confirmed drop sources. That doesn't mean you can't get them from things like World Quest and other means, but this is the one specific place you'll definitely be able to find them. There is also a Covenant-specific conduit for each Covenant, however, none of them are looking exceptionally powerful at this time, though I will still discuss them in the future for Rogue Covenant videos. Ambidexterity comes from Ventanax in Spires of Ascension, which is located in Bastion. This causes our Man Gauche to have an increased proc chance while Blade Flurry is active. This scales from 3% at rank 1 to 4.8% at rank 7. Count the Odds comes from Gore Chop in Theater of Pain, which is a dungeon in Maldraxxus. This conduit allows Ambush and Dispatch to have a chance to proc a Roll the Bones buff you don't currently have active for 5 seconds. The duration and chance is tripled if you are in stealth when you use the ability. It will start at a 15% chance proc rate at rank 1, and will scale up to 24% chance at rank 7. Sleight of Hand drops from dealer Xiaxa in The Other Side dungeon, located in Ardenweald. Roll the Bones will have an increased chance to give you a 2 buff. It will start at 10% increased chance at rank 1, scaling up to 16% at rank 7. And lastly, Triple Threat. This comes from the Stone Legion Generals, a raid encounter in Castle Nathria. This causes your Sinister Strike procs to have a chance to proc a dual hit. This starts at 9% chance at rank 1, scaling up to 15% at rank 7. So now that we know what all of our Outlaw-specific Potency conduits do, we'll go over which ones are the best options for us to try and get our hands on. Eventually, you'll end up with all of them most likely, but this seems to be the order of strength for all 4 conduits in both single-target and dungeon-style simulations. Count the Odds is showing to be the strongest conduit of all 4 of them, with Sleight of Hand being neck and neck with Triple Threat but edging it out just a little bit, and Ambidexterity being a bit underwhelming even in AoE, where it would be its most useful. Count the Odds will net us a lot of free Roll the Bones buffs, helping to mitigate some of the RNG of the ability with more RNG, ironically enough. Sleight of Hand and Triple Threat seem pretty close in value, so it's best to sim your own character in situations where you have both, especially if one's higher ranking than the other. Next, we'll go over our Covenant choice. This is something you'll have to do once you reach level 60 so that you can use all these conduits and soulbinds and all the stuff I've been talking about. Your 4 choices will be the Kyrian, the Night Fae, the Necrolords, and the Venthyr. You'll be helping all 4 of these covenants as you level throughout Shadowlands, so you'll grow familiar with them pretty quickly. And while leveling in their zones, you'll even get to try out their Covenant signature and your class-specific ability too. I did a very thorough video on this topic recently, so I'll leave a link to that on screen now. As for this guide, I plan on just getting into the numbers and telling you which one sims the best as of right now. A good thing to point out is that in raw single-target DPS, all 4 covenants are exceptionally close to each other for Outlaw, and they're within about 2-ish% difference from the best covenant to the worst. What that means is you will have very open and fair choice between all 4, as they each have unique benefits to bring to the table. As of this video though, the top simming single-target covenant and soulbind combination, which again can change very quickly due to tuning, is Nagia of the Venthyr. She has a very potent 20% haste buff from her Thrill Seeker Capstone trait, as well as a flat 3% damage gain from Dauntless Duelist as a choice near the end of her Soulbind tree, resulting in her edging out the other covenants by a small margin. For Dungeonslice though, this answer is kinda complicated and honestly pretty volatile. As of this video, Karain of the Night Fae is the strongest choice for dungeons. This is due to the strength of First Strikes, which gives you a free 25% crit chance for 5 seconds if you damage an enemy before they damage you. Wild Hunt Tactics is also pretty strong, as it gives you a flat 10% damage boost against any targets above 75% health. I would not be surprised to see a bit of tuning on Karain in the future, but you'll also want to consider the fact she is the last Soulbind of the Night Fae, which again is locked behind Renown time gating, so you won't be able to use her in her full Soulbind tree for like almost 3 months due to this. Any Outliers will most likely be tuned down, which Blizzard has proven they can actually do it by how close they've gotten their single target performance on us rogues. So unless you're a min-max hunter who is willing to jump around between covenants with every tuning pass, then just find the one you enjoy the most. Or have like 4 rogues all geared out. That's an option too for the truly dedicated. And lastly, Legendaries. It will take some time to earn the required reagents to craft them, as well as having to earn the memory of that legendary. The process is a little bit complicated at first, but I did a rough overview of it if you want to have a good idea of how the system works. This is a video from beta footage, but the general process hasn't changed too much if you want to watch. It is an older video of mine, so it's not quite as nice as these ones, so I apologize in advance. Anyways, there are a lot of legendaries you can earn and use, so I'll be explaining just the strongest ones in this guide and their confirmed drop locations, though I do plan on covering every rogue legendary in the future. As of launch in Shadowlands, you can only wear 1 legendary at a time, by the way. For Outlaw, the primo legendary we will want to use in basically all PvE situations is, at least as of this video's release, Celerity. This comes from Ventinax, a boss in the Spires of Ascension dungeon located in Bastion. This legendary will cause Adrenaline Rush to give us an 8% damage increase while Adrenaline Rush is active, and by having Slice and Dice active, we will get 4-second procs of Adrenaline Rush randomly as well. It is noticeably stronger in low target cleave and single target than any other option, so I can't say if this legendary will stay in its current tuning, but if so, definitely something to get if you play Outlaw in all forms of content. A great alternative for people who do a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons would be the Mark of the Master Assassin. This comes from the Affront of Challengers dungeon boss in the Theater of Pain, located in Maldraxxus. This causes you to receive a 100% crit chance bonus for 4 seconds anytime you come out of stealth, which is why it's so potent in Mythic Plus since we can re-stealth between trash packs and blow things up with Blade Flurry and Marked for Death spam. If you plan on leveling all 3 specs of Rogue, this is a great generic legendary option that is somewhat mediocre in raids, but for dungeons you really can't go wrong with this one. It will affect your stat priority a little bit if you choose to use it though, so do keep that in mind and sim your character when swapping stuff like this around. So that might be a lot of information to take in all at once, especially if you didn't know about any of these new game systems coming out with Shadowlands. But I hope this guide, as well as any future ones I make, and prior information I have on the channel will help put you in the right direction to gear out your Outlaw Rogue and get ready for some dungeons and raids. I do plan on updating this guide series with things like rotations, good trinkets to look out for, as well as whenever any new patches or tuning updates come out to the game. So I hope this video was helpful to you, and if so, any likes, comments, or new subscribers are all fantastic ways of showing your support for the channel. If you're new around to my little corner of the YouTube algorithm, then I'd like to welcome you to come check out the rest of the channel. I do new uploads every weekday on a variety of content, ranging from things like guides, add-ons, weak auras, tutorials, and obviously very rogue-specific things. I'd also like to take this time to thank all of my regular viewers, commenters, subscribers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.